Kind of along the same lines, obviously, in this Disney episode. Fantagraphics, once again, has also released Walt Disney's Donald Duck by Carl Barks. Lost in the Andes is the first volume of this series. Again, just a beautifully designed cover. They really did a nice job with this book. And again, this is one of those projects that for years and years I have, wished some comic book company would do.
It seems like both of these you've kind of mentioned like maybe a couple months before they came out that you wish they would have done this.
Well,
and then they did.
For
and then
years,
they
though, I've said, why doesn't somebody do like a complete reprinting of Carl Barks' Donald Duck? It's just, and Uncle Scrooge, they're doing Uncle Scrooge too. So I was just thrilled. I'm still kind of not over the fact that this is actually happening. Like, I'm just so thrilled that I actually have this book. It's been reprinted before. So I think most recently by like Another Rainbow did a complete, really expensive like black and white reprinting. I mean, that was years ago, but Gemstone had the rights to the Disney characters, as most people probably know, for quite some time. They reprinted some Barks material, but scattered. It wasn't like the complete Carl Barks. And I mean, Carl Barks is unquestionably one of the all-time great cartoonists in all of comics. No question about it. I mean, he's in the canon with like Jack Kirby, the comic strip artists I mentioned before. I mean, Robert Crumb. I mean, he is like right up there as one of the greats. So this needed to happen, and Fantagraphics did a great job with this first volume. So Carl Barks' Lost in the Andes, Donald Duck stories. They're going to reprint everything, but this is not a chronological reprinting. So unlike Mickey Mouse, Fantagraphics has jumped ahead a little bit in Carl Barks' run to kind of get to the peak material. And in fact, Lost in the Andes, the central story that's reprinted here, is reportedly Carl Barks, the late Carl Barks' favorite story. It was his own favorite that he did. So I think it's kind of cool that they started with that one. And indeed, it is a really good story. So I think the thing that I hear people, Carl Barks has been talked about so much, it's kind of hard to like find a way into critiquing it. I think the thing that people talk about most with Carl Barks' stories are his skills as a writer, in that these are really well-constructed adventure stories. And they are, and certainly. So I tried to kind of pay attention to other aspects of the work while I was reading it. So not only is he a great writer, but the art obviously is fantastic here. He has these great cartoony characters, of course, these duck characters, some of whom, like Uncle Scrooge, he created, many of whom he inherited from Disney, but very much made his own in these comic books. So the cartooning is fantastic. There is a real warmth and humanity to these characters too, I found. There's just something really endearing and charming about them. Even more so than the Mickey Mouse characters. Yeah. There's a bit of a softer edge in some ways to this Barks stuff that was really inviting and just wonderful children's entertainment that adults can enjoy. So yeah, I enjoyed those aspects of it. We have the book starts with long adventure stories by Carl Barks, which he's most well known for. Lost in the Andes is one of those. There are some others. There's a section then of short stories, and then also a final section of like, I don't know, 3 or 4 pages. Yeah. Short like gag stories, which are just kind of one note, one joke stories, which he's also really good at. And he's a very funny cartoonist too. So everything kind of works here. Everything kind of clicks. This is an unequivocal master of comics at the height of his fame or his skills rather. And again, like Floyd Gottfredson, worked anonymously for years and years. comics fans came to know him as the good duck artist, right? Before they knew who he was, they became fans of him, and then finally he was able to get a lot of the recognition that was definitely his due. And was just allowed to kind of occupy this little corner of the vast Disney empire and create something truly, truly wonderful. So if you are a comic book fan, you pretty much need to have at least some Carl Barks work on your shelf, and Fantagraphics has given us just a terrific opportunity with this book. So this is the first in the Donald Duck series. They're going to be reprinting all of Donald Duck. They're going to be reprinting all of Uncle Scrooge. There's years and years of stories, and this is a great beginning.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one. I actually preferred these to Mickey Mouse. These are actually comic books as opposed to comic strips, so there wasn't that repetition. It wasn't as tedious to go through. You know what I mean?
Right. They read great as a graphic novel.
Yeah, they read great. Yeah. They're a lot of fun. There's a lot of great stories in here. The Golden Christmas Tree. There's at one point there's the witch from Snow White makes an appearance in this one.
I don't know if she's actually the witch from Snow White, but she sort of looks like her.
Yeah. They mention the witch from Snow White.
Yep.
And Uncle Scrooge, and obviously Huey, Dewey, and Louie are featured very prominently in this. And I don't know, they're cute little kids that finish each other's sentences and kind of get in trouble a little bit. And Donald Duck is kind of like like in the cartoons that you've seen. He has kind of that temper, and throws little tantrums, and that kind of comes through. And it's
a little bit, but Barks kind of would alter Donald's personality, I feel, to fit the particular stories.
Yeah.
So that in the adventure stories, he was more of kind of like an optimistic kind of everyman. Whereas in the shorter pieces and the gag pieces especially, he seemed to be more of the short-tempered character we know from the cartoons. So Carl Barks kind of was able to use these characters almost as actors in these stories, and they could sort of alter their personalities a little bit to fit the types of stories that Barks was telling.
And he wasn't too obviously caught up in continuity. Some stories Donald Duck would have a ton of money, some he would be scraping by trying to get money.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Donald Duck does not have like a particular job or he'll whatever is required to fit the needs of the story. I mean, I liken it to something like Buster Keaton or a W.C. Fields or a Charlie Chaplin or an Abbott and Costello.
Yeah.
These great comedic types who are always basically the same characters, but there's no continuity between episodes. The style and the character is somewhat consistent, but everything else is shifted around in the service of telling these wonderful stories.
I would say that fits definitely.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the coloring is really good in this book. Rich Tommaso, a cartoonist himself, does the coloring here. And there's always a couple different ways you can go when you're reprinting a classic comic book, and there's a lot of debate about what's the best way to do that. And I don't know if I don't have like a hard line on it. A lot of books, like I think the John Stanley Library from Drawn and Quarterly, will literally just photograph and copy the actual comic book page. So it'll have the actual coloring and all that kind of thing that originally appeared in the comics. On the extreme other end of that, you would have something like what Marvel does in their like Masterworks books, where they completely recolor it with really bright modern coloring on glossy paper. Not really probably the best approach. Fantagraphics completely recolored these books. They had a cartoonist do it, and he used the original comics as a guide. So he was emulating the look of those original comics without being a complete slave to them. They want it to look clear and attractive, but it has a muted palette. It's not the kind of garish blues and reds that you would see in some of these other reprint collections that I mentioned. So they've really presented this work with a lot of care, and I couldn't imagine it ended up in the hands of a better publisher. So I'm just thrilled that this is coming out and we get to talk about it. It's terrific, and everyone should read it. Disney fans and comics fans, definitely check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 great works from Fantagraphics.
Absolutely.
Looking for gifts for the holidays. I mean, these are 2 great ones to give out, I think.
Yeah,
so.
there you go.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, that's that.
All right, thank you for tuning in. Lots more Disney stuff to come from Fantagraphics. And we will see you next week with some more reviews. All right, thank you.